Exactly 4 minutes gone past the hour of 9 o'clock in the morning time. Good morning to you, Grenada, Carriacou, Petite Martinique, the rest of the Eastern Caribbean. To you, wherever you are, it's a glorious Wednesday morning, and it is the 30th day of the month of October. And indeed, again, we're here for another episode of To The Point. My guest this morning, even before I get to my guest, I certainly want to say good morning to those of you that's in Classic Radio, 105.5 and 105.9. Those of you in television, channel 7, 11, and channel 20 if you're in cable. And those of you that's chiming in via our various social media platforms, be it Facebook or YouTube, a glorious good morning to you and welcome to the conversation. We're about to delve into, continue that is, with a conversation that we've been addressing for quite a while. It isn't, normally there's some topics I normally refer to as being sexy. This one isn't one of those sexy ones that allows for contention and bacchanal and all of that. Maybe in some circles it does, though. But we want to continue with the conversation really as it's the government, to the government's turn on the whole conversation of pension reform and the new pension plan. And my guest this morning is Lyndonna Hillaire, Marshal, and she is the Permanent Secretary with responsibility for public administration. She's in studio this morning. Good morning, Lady Marshal. How are you?
I am blessed, and blessed morning to you, sir, and blessed morning to your viewers and listeners of the program.
Excellent. And I'm assuming that when you say you're blessed, that's not a cliche.
No, I feel blessed because I am under the cover of my Heavenly Father. Excellent. So I'm always blessed.
I ask people because it has become in some circles a cliche. How are you? Oh, blessed and highly favored.
Oh, well, that's good. We have to cover ourselves.
But normally I try to find out for folks whether or not it is in fact what we live in. Because it's better to be living blessed than telling yourself you're blessed and there are things otherwise. But either way, thank you and welcome to the program. Pension reform. And I know the folks at home, they've heard me introduce the topic. And they start going,
that again.
That again. Well, yes, that again, because it is a conversation that needs to be had. And certainly, at the end of the day, there must be a full appreciation that the public has a full appreciation as to exactly what are the full gambits of this conversation. So let us start the conversation by just doing a summary. How would we get to this point? So let's establish the background for this conversation that allows for pension reform.
Okay, so I would say when we think about the background to get us here, we look at it from two perspectives. The first would be that of the well-being of our public service employees,
yes,
and that of the cost implication for the current pension that exists. So I would speak a bit about the employees' well-being. And I think it's only fair and responsible of any employer to seek the well-being of its employees. So as it's current in the public service, I think it's no secret that we have two cadre of public service employees. We have persons who are on the establishment and people who are not, with different modes of engagement. And with that, they enjoy different benefits. And it's not fair as an employer to engage that sort of thing. So the intention is to regularize and normalize, deal with the anomalies that exist in the public service with the terms and conditions of engagement.
If you can, because when you have an hour, so the phase always that we don't make it too long-winded.
Yeah.
But if we could give the general public a full appreciation, what are some of those variables that we refer to?
Okay, so in terms of pay, some people, they may be doing similar roles, but the point on which they are paid, their pay anomalies. They may be vacation anomalies. Some people enjoy more while some enjoy less. Pension is an anomaly. Some enjoy pension, some don't, and that sort of thing. So the terms and conditions of the engagements are not the same. So
the plan is to provide a central platform that all employees within the government service can realize the same benefits. Okay, great. So that's the background to it.
Right. And another part to the background has also to do with the cost implication. The current pension that exists, we recognize it's non-funded and it's non-contributory. So it's difficult for any government to maintain and sustain a pension of that nature because it has to fund it on its own. So it is something that is of concern.
Okay. But there are those that would ask, though, and we just want to be as transparent as it is. They are those that would say, at which point the administration come to that realization that the old system, the old pension system, really and truly wasn't workable. There are those that argue that during the campaigning process, it was made to seem as though it's a no holds barred, we going full stream, let's get this done here and now.
I can't speak to the political part of it, but from the administrative arm, we've always recognized it as not being sustainable. I think since 1983, when the pension was suspended, I think that was the real reason why it was.
Okay.
And we moved to NIS to be the retirement benefit organization that would provide that. So it was ceased then.
Right.
I would believe for that same purpose, because any economics thinking, would recognize that if it's not funded, it's not contributory over a period of time. If you don't have additional economic stimulating means, it is going to be hard to sustain something like that.
Okay. So let's take look at the whole gambit of the reform. Exactly how that process is being rolled out. Is there a timetable? Let's talk about that. Exactly what the government is offering as it stands.
Okay, so often we like targets. We like to place something that we can work towards. So yes, we did target October 1st. Initially, it was supposed to be January 1st this year.
Okay.
And I mean, these things, there are a lot to consider. And we want to make sure we cover all facets that will allow for the best for all parties, right? So over time, we moved from January to October simply because we wanted to make sure we meet and engage every stakeholder so that we hear their views, their concerns, and we build the plan around what the concerns are as far as it is possible. So we've missed our October 1st deadline simply because, again, we wanted to go back out, hear what more of the concerns are, make sure that we are covering all the factors that need to be considered so that we can have a comprehensive plan that can serve our public officers well.
What were some of those prevailing concerns? And I'm asking you that from the backdrop that only yesterday I had a representative from the NNP who indicated that was one of the failures, one of his concerns, the lack of consultation.
We've held over 50 sessions, 50 for the last over a year, almost going on 2 years now. So I cannot say, through my lens, I cannot agree that it was a lack of consultation. I think people did not take it seriously, and most people did not appreciate and take advantage of the offered sessions, because we had sessions open to the public, we had sessions targeted to specific stakeholders, and we had sessions that were live stream. So we tried our best to reach everybody, including the general public.
Who are some of those stakeholders? Just for
our public officers for sure are our stakeholders. So we've met with the public officers, our unions are also a stakeholder. We also met with the Chamber of Commerce, the Employers Federation, these sort of bodies, so that we can hear a broader view of the different perspectives. So
and any argument, any person that follows that argument, you would not see that as a legitimate argument, is it?
I know, I don't subscribe to that. I don't think that these consultations were lacking in any way.
Was there any consultation with the opposition?
As a body, no. We did not specifically say, let us meet with the opposition, but the opportunity was there for everybody to participate in the consultations.
Okay.
So maybe that one,
As a public officer, do you think that there was an open and glaring need to involve the opposition?
In hindsight, maybe we could have, but I've never thought of them as a direct stakeholder in this. So we did not specifically say, let us meet with the opposition.
Right, but you say...
But I think we've opened it broad enough for anybody of interest to participate in the consultation in one way or the other.
And you're saying categorically, unequivocally, that you've had more than 50 sessions?
Yes, we did.
More than 50
yes,
sessions.
we did. Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you said the process started some 2 years, well, almost 2 years ago. Was there a set timetable? Or because you said the initial plan was to start?
Yeah, so when we started, the first thing was for us to operationalize the committee. There's a cabinet constituted pension reform committee, and the committee started with, and we have a terms of reference. The first thing we did was an implementation plan to map the process through to the end, by the end of the year. And then, things can happen. So we did not see the plan come as exactly as we intended for it to, but we nonetheless continued with all the activities that was slated on the plan.
What were some of the major challenges you had?
Time, competing priorities, and that I would say is a major one. And two, sometimes what we understand one thing to be, there's a lot more research that needs to go into it. We also had challenge with data. All the information wasn't readily available in one place, so it took us a little more time to find the information that we needed, because you can't make decisions without information.
Right.
And that was a huge challenge in terms of, getting the data that we needed so that the consultant, which was the actual scientist, can do the permutations and the modeling so that we have a better sense as to what the whole thing would look like.
So what does it look like?
Well, the pension, the new pension.
Yes.
Some of the main features that I would mention is the fact that the plan is designed to support multiple employers. So while the government will be the main employer, what we're happy about is that it speaks to the intention to offer the opportunity for the well-being of all employees to be considered. So it does allow for the statutory bodies, for example, to be part of the plan. And later, if there are private sector organizations who are finding it difficult to administrate a plan, because, pension plan administration is very costly. We can afford for those people to also seek to be part of the plan, people who are self-employed, for example, somebody who is a fisherman, farmers, the plan is built in such a way that it can accommodate multiple employers.
So I'm getting the sense that this pension reform conversation goes beyond just, as you said, civil servants as we know it.
Yes, it's a pub. So what we've instead of identifying it as a public service plan, you notice that we now changed the scope a bit to the public sector plan. So it does covers the statutory bodies.
All and sundry. If you're interested.
So the good news is that because of the interest from the statutory bodies, the government has decided from day one we can include those who are interested in the plan. So yes.
So let's talk about it as a contributory plan. Give us some details as to what it is contained.
So yes, it is contributory. So the government will match so let's say the plan, the contributions would be matched. People who are working for under the NIS ceiling. So I think the NIS ceiling now is $5,000. So if you're working for $5,000 and less, the government would pay 3% and you would pay 3%. So it's matching 3 and 3.
Right.
If you are above the ceiling, it would be 3 below and 6 above. So if, for example, you work for $7,000, the government will pay the 3 on your behalf. You pay the 3 below, and the 2,000 excess of the 5,000 would be 6 and 6. Mm-hmm. So it's 3% below the ceiling and 6% above.
And of course, you've indicated in terms of eligibility, we've established. Is there any special process that one has to go through in order to satisfy eligibility?
No. So the only exclusion would be people who are over the retirement age 60. In some circles is 60, some is 65, and people who are on short-term contracts, maybe just relief people for 3 months, that sort of thing. But everybody else would be considered to be part of the plan. Or if you're a trainee too as well, you would not consider to be part of the plan. But everybody else, no matter the mode, no matter what job you do, you would be considered to be part of the plan.
Help me to appreciate when you say trainee. Trainee in the context, because there's those who've always seen the Imani.
Yes, the Imanis are trainees.
Right.
So for now, they're not going to be part of the plan until they become full-fledged employees.
What about those, you've had persons within the civil service, and you heard it's a clamor from the GAT's end in a lot. Persons that have been in the system, but they've not been regularized.
So that's a process that we're also doing as well, the regularization process. So they are being considered under that initiative.
So they are being considered
under the regularization, yes.
But that process seemed, help me though, to get a full appreciation of that regularization process, how it goes, because somehow it seemed to be one of those revolving door conversations that you keep hearing of. Regularization.
Well, I wouldn't say it's resolving though. We did indicate since 2022, when the regularization framework was introduced, that it is a process that is not going to be easily just, you can't just get up one day and say, we're going to just take the 4,000 plus people who are unestablished and place them on the establishment, because there are a lot of factors and concerns that you need to consider. Hence, we say this thing must be done systematically. And so we've designed a framework, and the framework allows for us to do it in phases. And we've identified the 3 phases that it would be done. The first, which would consider people who are currently on the establishment, so people who are acting, probation, temporary, those sort of category of workers, they are the ones who are considered first.
Right.
And the second phase now considers people who have the holding PSC contracts, people who are holding Government of Grenada contracts, open-ended letters, and those sort of things. So this is what we're looking at this phase. And the final phase is expected to be completed next year, 2025, where we would look at people holding contract for service as well as the Imanis.
That phase 3, how long is that phase 3 do you anticipate it would take? You said it's about
3,000.
4,000.
3,000 plus
employees.
From what we've looked at, yes.
You talked about the sustainability of the plan. That was one of the concerns from day one, and which had to fast track the conversation about pension reform, because of course it was always part of the conversation under the Constitution. But it has, the government wage bill has gone from what it was in 1958. And it has grown exponentially.
Yeah.
How much of a concern is it? While it's been done in a phased process, how concerned are you? Because we're thinking maybe by the next 2-3 years, those 3,000 plus workers would going through by phase, would be regularized. Are you concerned that once they're regularized, that those initial concerns about sustainability comes into play from the government's perspective?
It's always a concern. That's why we're saying everything has to be done systematically. And for us, we see the pension reform as a part of the regularization process. Remember, what we're trying to do is fix the anomalies.
Right.
Not having a pension is an anomaly. So that's why we have to be systematic about it. If we just take the whole 4,000 plus people, put them onto the establishment now, these people will be eligible for the current pension.
Right.
That is something that would be of a significant concern for the state, because the state has an obligation to sustainable compensation management. You remember, at one point we had an issue where for every $1 that was spent, 70 cents went towards salaries and pension.
Right.
No state can comfortably speak growth if that is the way it's going to go. So we need to be prudent with how we do things, particularly with regards to compensation management. So hence we're saying there's no way the government would be able to comfortably manage and sustain putting everybody who is not currently on the current pension onto it without it being a significant cost concern. So hence we need to marry the two. See pension as part of the regularization process, because the intention is, at the end of the day, we want all workers to have some means of retirement benefit at the end of their tenure.
And I think that's in essence the scope of this reformation process.
Yes.
To ensure at the end of the day you don't go home wondering.
We would love to have all our employees go home at least being able to maintain a comfortable standard of living. We don't expect you to have your full 100% of your salary, because we tell it's a best practice for it to be between 75 to 85% of your salary, your return. So
does the pension conversation, does it take into consideration, yes, when you go in with something, but does it take into consideration, I know we've had, and I'm asking this from the backdrop of the whole conversation of minimum wage, which certainly was a breath of relief for a lot of our hardworking people. But the whole pension and what you're going to get to go home, does it take into consideration minimum wage, what the actual people's wages as it is, and whether or not 20 years from now, 30 years from now, what is being inputted would be sufficient enough?
Well, that's what we needed the actual scientists to do for us, is to do the permutation and the modeling to determine what would be the real rate that needs to go in now to allow for persons to go home with 70 to 85% of their income later. So
right.
that aspect of it we left to the people with the technical expertise to guide us, and so we're comfortable with what was determined.
And is that model, does it remain fixed, or does it
there's
allow
always
for some adaptation?
every 3-4 years there would be some sort of actual review, so that we can have a better sense as to how things would move forward.
So this process is not an open and shut, okay, let's do reform, and it's over and done, and then we leave that there until?
Well, it depends on what you mean when you say that. I mean, the reform, if now the government decides that it's going to introduce a new pension, and over time the current one would phase out,
right,
and just this one would exist, because what would happen when this one becomes into effect? Everybody who is going to be joining the public service after that date will be under this new pension. So the intent is, over time, we would see a phase out of the current one, which is non-contributory and non-funded.
Right.
Right?
We're keeping our eyes on the clock. 26 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. We'll take a quick commercial break, Master Controller. When I say quick, you know I mean very quick. Quick commercial break. And we'll be right back. Continue with my guest, Lyndonna Hillaire Marshall, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for public administration.
Tourism is me, tourism is you, tourism is everybody, and tourism connects us all.
Did you know that tourism generates revenue and foreign exchange earnings?
Did you know it stimulates infrastructural development and facilitates cultural exchange among people?
You must know tourism is linked to all industries,
from agriculture to construction.
So support the industry today and be welcoming to all our visitors.
Tourism is my business. Tourism is your business. Tourism is our business. Listen, one and all. Tourism connects us all.
A message from the Ministry of Tourism
and the Grenada Tourism Authority.
Welcome back to the program. 27 minutes gone past the hour in the morning time. And in case you just joining me, my guest this morning is Lyndonna Hillaire Marshall, Permanent Secretary with responsibility for public administration. And our conversation touches and surrounds the whole gambit of pension reform. Why the need for reform? What's the overarching benefit? And we've established, Ms. Marshall, that it means going forward, that you've worked, as you say, you're working then in all your life in local parlance. No longer should you need to be worried as to me going home empty-handed. One of the highlights of the things what you said, of course, you've had the experts get the data, crunch it, and the pension reform process is set up in such a way that it allows for flexibility over a period of time to adjust it. Yes? Are you?
No, I'm not crying. Sorry.
No, I was just, I was just wondering, making sure that you're fine.
For actual reviews,
right,
periodically, yes. So that's the bill would speak to that. The act would speak to that.
Okay. We're going to give you an opportunity. Feel free, those of you that's in social media, to chime in with your contribution. We're going to open up the lines as well. 435-2041, that's the telephone number. Or you can call via WhatsApp, 435-2041, as we continue with the conversation. And you can feel free to make your contributions via the WhatsApp portal. We have a caller that is on the line. Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Oh, yes. Good morning to you, Joe. And good morning to your guests. You know, I listened to this conversation there, and it sounds so complicated that I'm wondering about the feasibility of this thing down the road. Because when you talk about private sector people can also come into this. But you have the NIS, which is accommodating the private sector and even government workers. Why should the private sector be part of that if you're creating a scheme for public workers? Yeah? I would suggest that knowing that you have the NIS, if you could upgrade the laws of the NIS to allow these people to get the long-term pension from the NIS, because they're already contributing to the NIS, instead of creating a new scheme for them, that to me could be very complicated and challengeable. I think the other aspect is, whilst we might be contemplating creating a new scheme, would the salary of these workers be upgraded incrementally? Because you see, the economy is almost flat. It is not doing as well as it should to create higher wages and to create more people being employed, even in the private sector. So that says that the wages will also be depressed. And that is where we need to go. If we could get the economy going, all these things about new pension will not apply, because you'll have better wages, and people might be satisfied with the wages instead of getting an additional pension. It is complicated, and I think down the road, I see more problem than what we have now.
Okay.
Yeah?
Thank you, sir.
Have a good day, sir.
Okay, I mean, I'm not seeing the complication. I think the government has recognized its responsibility to look after the well-being of employees and not just keeping it within the public sector, seeing that there are employees leaving private sector organizations without a pension as well. Yes, we have the NIS, but when some people tell you what they get at the end of the month from NIS, we know it is not sufficient to operate at a basic normal standard of living after you've worked for 20, 25 years. So the intent is to, I would say, tap up, if for want of a better word, to strengthen what we get from NIS. And this is a means to allow people to do that. And I don't think we should close the door to people who are unable to do it on their own, because, as I said, pension administration is not a cheap, And
the thing in reality, you could probably count locally how many business entities do have pensions running. I mean,
you'll be surprised to know how many people do not have pension.
And that is true. Mm-hmm. So maybe that can be considered to be an opportunity for.
So it's not going to complicate anything. I mean, you just have to have the right administration in place, and you do the thing properly. I mean, it's not complicated at all. We
go to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning, Mr. Cadore and Mr. PS.
Good morning.
As the oil and gas come online, how do you see that would impact the economy of Grenada and all that you're talking about in the future? With the oil and gas coming along to help with the Treasury, could you explain that in the future, how soon in the future that would impact on the oil and gas on the economy? Thank you.
Oil and gas?
Yes, he was saying, given the conversation touching us around the oil and gas coming, I'm not sure whether or not you would determine that. How do you that plays into the bigger picture of Grenada's economy?
Well, that would be good if we get oil and gas. It would allow for the economy to blossom and give us more opportunities to invest in capitals so that we can see more growth for our people in Grenada. So, I mean, I would love that we would be able to explore and see what's out there with regards to that. I would only see that being beneficial to the economy and even making life better for even with the pension. I don't see how that would affect the pension negatively. It means that we have more opportunities to expand the possibilities of increasing salaries and allowing people to enjoy a better standard of living. I would love to see that. So we could probably increase the rate of the pension. Instead of giving 3% from the government, we probably could give 6 or maybe even 10, and everybody would benefit.
Good morning, caller. You're live.
Hi, good morning.
Yes, you're alive.
I want to know that, yes, I want to find out, I worked at the Ministry of Education for 16 years, and I was a daily pay worker. And I got sick. I was in bed for almost 4 years. I couldn't walk, talk, eat, drink, nothing. But thank God I'm alive today. So I want to know that what solution you all have for the daily pay workers like me and others who work for all these years, and we need only NIS alone we get in and ex gratia. So I want to know what you all have in place for us. I mean, I know, just asking. Thank you.
Caller.
That simply just explains all that we're saying. We really don't want this sort of situation to continue. Would we like for anybody else to be experiencing something like that? I don't think so. So we need to stop the bleeding now. Whatever we can do, whatever we can put in place to ensure people don't go home like that. Because she's mentioning what she's getting from NIS. It really doesn't cut it for her.
Good morning, caller. You're live.
Yes, good morning, sir.
Yes,
I want to ask a question.
Yes, go ahead, please.
Okay.
Yes,
First
go
of
ahead.
all, I want you to listen to 3 issues. All right. The unestablished workers. Do you make them permanent? Make them permanent and pay them the pension and gratuity as established by the 1958 Constitution, or two, you do not make them permanent, send them home with nothing. Or the third option, to introduce a contributory pension arrangement, so at the end of their service they will go home with something. Which is your preferred option, and why?
Thank you very much, caller.
Well, I'm happy to hear the caller articulate the 3 options, because that's exactly the 3 options we considered. Mm-hmm. And when you think of the first option, to just put everybody onto the establishment and make them entitled to the 1958 pension, as we mentioned, right, is really going to put a strain on the government's ability to manage compensation. We really don't want to get back to the point where most of our spending is on compensation, salaries and pensions. So that option is going to crowd out most of our options to grow the economy. So that option we really cannot consider. Likewise, too, we really don't want people to, like the caller, go home without a means of a retirement benefit. This is something that we would really guard against. So our third option and best option would be, how do we find that balance? And the balance we would find is to reform the pension, allow for it to be contributory and funded so that the government can afford to meet its obligation for sustainable compensation management.
I want to address the issue of what some refer to as while there's a concern about putting weight on the economy in terms of bringing everybody on board. The argument has been, even if it's contributory, that 3% literally is an overkill and what is already low wages. But before we even get to that, there's a caller online. Good morning, caller.
Hello, morning.
Yes, good morning. Go ahead, please.
Marshall. Miss Marshall, you are refreshing, very refreshing. The first time I heard you, was when you were brought on by the Prime Minister to explain to people that the stroke of a pen process, ever since he came on, and unfortunately, Mr. Cadore keep asking you political questions. But what I'm pointing out here to you is that stroke of a pen is an impractical thing given the situation as it is constructed, especially. It was refreshing to hear you. Refreshing this morning once again. A question that I want you to answer, please, is whether the proposal that is now in action came from the committee to deal with the pension reform issue. I want to get that clear, please, so that we understand that what is happening now, it is not a scheme that is designed by politicians, but recommended by experts to the extent that it is practical and workable if it is necessary at the same time. And whether it is legal, given that there is an original pension law, and at the same time, the whole pension issue came about. The lawsuit was brought on by a lady, and the rule has to be obeyed.
Okay, sir.
How that come into the scheme of things?
Thank you very much.
So the first point is whether the committee actually developed the plan.
Yes.
So as we indicated, the committee started first with discussion. So we really wanted to hear what are some of the salient concerns, what are some of the factors that we need to consider to start building this plan. And that is where we started off, by having a conversation with the private sector, having a conversation with the public servants, so that we hear what the issues are. And that is what we put on the table first before we even started anything. So the plan was built around what the concerns and factors really needed to be included in this plan. So it was actually developed not just by us, but I think a huge part of it was by what we heard during the consultations. So nothing starts from nowhere. I'm sure the consultant, with his guidance, would have had the experience with other plans. So he did bring on some of the issues that were raised in other islands, and we worked from there to build what now exists as a new plan. Mm-hmm. There was another part to his.
I think he was looking at when you juxtapose the two positions of the original Pension Act under the Constitution.
Okay, so I mean the legal concerns keep coming up, and we're quite aware of the fact that there are legal concerns, but we do have legal minds as well who are leading and guiding the process. So we are trusting that we are in capable hands. We have a legal Ministry of Legal Affairs. We did have a legal representative on the committee. And we are confident that we have explored all the legal ramifications, and we are going according to what is legally, appropriate.
Good morning, caller. You're live.
Hi. Good morning. First is just an observation. The pension matter is obviously a matter of national importance, right? And I must say, in the past 2 weeks or so, there's been a lot of discussion on this program and other programs relating to the matter. So, for example, last week there was, I think the NNP was represented by Mr. Mason, or Brother Mason, if I may say so. The following day, there was another program on it. I think one was represented by Mr. Joseph of the NNP. So there would have been at least 4 occasions where this matter was topical and actually took up the whole program. Sadly, in none of those encounters has the persons involved, and when I say the persons involved, I mean the unions involved, been invited or took part in any of the discussions. So it is obvious that the politicians are dealing with the matter. The press is addressing the matter with the politicians, but the persons affected, and when I say the persons affected, they're all represented or should all be represented by unions. They have had no say in this matter other than maybe someone calling in. So that's just one observation, and it is a criticism, right? Because in all fairness, a matter like this, you should hear all sides. We have not been hearing all sides, and I put the two groups of politicians on one side because they are the politicians and they have been and are the employers. So we've heard the employer side of it, all right? We have not heard the worker side of it. So you may try to correct that to make the program and your listeners be dealt with a little bit more fairly on the subject. That's one. Just on the program today, and it may be in error, but I heard your guest, I think it's Ms. Marshall, indicate that there's some suggestion that the 3,300 or the 4,000 workers who are now in some form of employment, that there's a suggestion that they should be engaged in the same format as established workers. I've never heard that being suggested. I've heard about being made permanent, which is completely different from being made established workers. So I'm not sure if it's an error, which he may try to correct, right? But it is absolutely misleading to say that someone is expecting that the 4,000 odd workers should be made established workers, and that was actually said. And I never heard from the unions or government any suggestion relating to that. So I'm not sure if it's an error or it's a misleading statement, but I think that should be corrected. And please try to invite someone from the trade union group from the trade union movement to address this matter, because they, just like how in the consultations and so, would have not been engaged. And in my own view, there's one word that has never been used in this discussion, and that is the issue of negotiations, which by law has to be done. Once you're going to change my salary, change my conditions, all right? Especially where I have to pay money out of my pocket, I don't see how it can be done by either a stroke of the pen or even an act of parliament, but this matter has to be negotiated, and no negotiations have taken place. Okay, consultation and negotiations are two completely different things. Sorry for being long-winded.
Thank you very much.
But I think it's important.
Appreciate the call. Ms. Marshall?
Mm-hmm. Okay, so in the public service, when we speak to established workers, we're speaking to the employees who are engaged under the Public Service Commission. So they would have an instrument issued by the Public Service Commission. The concern that we are trying to address is the almost equal number of people who are not engaged by the Public Service Commission. So the intent is to give these people security of tenure. Right. So this is where we're at in making the decision. How do we do that? Do we put them all on the establishment? So our concern is, as I mentioned before, the cost implication. As we said, from an administrative perspective, we are looking at the pension reform as a means of regularization. The intent of the regularization is to address the anomalies that exist with the different modes of engagement in the public service. One of the key things that people want to see as an employee is security of tenure.
Let me ask you if you can, I know we touched on it, and the caller was given the sense when in the whole conversation of consultation, he made reference to the union. And I do agree, and of course at the GBN, we made the platform available to anybody. Mm-hmm. If the union determines that they have a need, that they need, and as they have done historically, the platform is available. But he seemed to be suggesting as though there wasn't, or there has not been, any sort of consultation with the trade union movement.
Let me see how I can best articulate our view of this. Mm-hmm. The cabinet approved the constitution of a pension reform committee, and they identified 6 seats on that committee. The identified members were written to. The submission was tabled by the Ministry of Finance. So the Ministry of Finance, upon receiving the conclusion, would invite the people officially. Right. So the letters were sent to the 6 people, cabinet approved. The letter was also sent to the TUC as one of the the cabinet approved sitting on the committee. Okay. So the TUC is the umbrella body for unions in Grenada. So our intention was to have the TUC decide whom among you would get to be on the committee. The internal politics of the TUC has nothing to do with us. I mean, we don't know what the mechanism they use to make the decisions. We don't know. However they do it, that's fine. So we were expecting to see somebody on the committee. We understand that.
You say you were expecting to see
a representative from the union sit on the committee, just like we had a representative from finance, we had a representative from the public service, Department of Public Administration, we had a legal representative, we had someone from NIS, we had an economist.
So is it that they have not been?
They have not been on the committee. They have not been on the committee. The letter was sent, and I understand that the terms of reference was not included in the letter as was intended. Because when I got my letter, it did say, see the terms of reference attached. Right. And it wasn't attached. So I called the finance to say, well, I got the letter, the terms of reference is not attached. It was then sent after. So, I mean, but I always believe responsibility goes both ways.
Has there been efforts, as far as you're aware, to ensure that communique was received? It was
acknowledged,
and somebody be part of that conversation.
It was, and a follow-up email was sent probably about 3 weeks after, saying we've sent you this, and we are still awaiting your representative on the committee.
And that committee has been established for almost 2 years.
Yes, almost 2 years now. So I mean,
you're saying to people from then until now, the trade unions?
We have not had a trade union representative on the committee. That does not mean that we have not heard from the trade unions. We've engaged them separately. Okay. We've sent communication to the Public Workers Union. We've sent to all the unions to have engaged. We sent the plan that was developed. We sent it so that the unions can see what it is, and you can give however you want to do it. If you don't want to sit at the table to make your points known while at the table, that's fine. Right. But you can have other means to get it done. And I mean, I'm saying if there's a matter going on, and even if the government did not invite me as a representative body of something of that nature, I would make myself
What are some of those other means by which they can have their voices heard? Because I would think that
request sit down, send in your comments. However, I don't know how they would choose to do it, but they can do it. However, I don't think we were closed in terms of accommodating a discussion or accommodating anything at all when it comes to the union, because we understand the union's stake in all of this. And for us, the stakeholder who is key is the public officers. And so hence, if we could not get the union, we spoke to the public officers directly.
And your sense of the public officers?
We have not had any adverse reaction from any of our public officers that we spoke to on the matter, and we've been doing that since then. So I'm not sure.
But those public officers, what percentage of the public service do they represent?
Well, as we see, it's almost half.
Almost half?
Almost half.
Almost half.
Mm-hmm.
Good morning, caller. You're alive.
Hi, good morning. Yes, I'm on the program.
Yes, you're alive.
Okay. We would like to hear about from the unions, right? And I think the union should be involved because
Caller.
Hi.
Is it possible we can turn on the device in the background, please?
Okay. Sure. Hold on a bit. Hold on.
425-2041, that's the number on the inside.
Right.
Yes,
right. Do you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay, we need to hear from the unions too, because I was appointed and confirmed under the Public Service Commission, and I know you cannot appoint everybody. It has a cutoff point, because it will be a strain on the government when it comes to the gratuity on your pension. So So we need to hear more from the unions instead of only the permanent secretary.
Okay.
Right? So we need to know more about it. We're hearing from the politicians, but we need to hear more from the union, the Trade Union Council, and what I just said, the other part I said. So we need to hear more about it, because I know it have a cut-off point, and they cannot employ a whole bunch of people under the Public Service Commission, make them permanent. So you must have the unestablished, you must have daily pay, and you must have the established workers. So we need to hear more about it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, caller.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, we would love to hear more from the union as well, exactly what are the concerns, what the issues they think we need to address. We always say our interest is the same.
What is interesting, though, last week we had one of George Mason, former trade union, she was here, and I got the sense from him that the union was on board with this. It's interesting now that you're hearing. The question is where those, at what level are these conversations being had? Is it being had at the upper echelons of these organizations and not being filtered down to the membership? Mm-hmm. It would be important to note exactly. But added to that, the unions, of course, they have their platforms that they use to get their concerns out. Mm-hmm. So we would hope reasonably, and I just want to say for the purpose of the GBN, just to get back to the gentleman's earlier statement, that these platforms here at the GBN, I show historically you've seen the TUC, you've seen all of the members, the union on our platform. So it is open in case they need a platform to further their conversation. We go back to the telephone lines. Good morning, caller.
Good morning. To your guest, Ms. Marshall. I had to say I was pleasantly pleased with your delivery with this matter with the Prime Minister some weeks ago. I want to congratulate you, well versed. I listened to a conversation on Ride Along with Mr. Bud Patterson and another trade union leader. And it is clear to me that the union has a serious problem. And he made it specifically. And he drew a reference because when the question was posed about the sustainability of the present pension system, Mr. Patterson made it absolutely clear that there is no evidence that pension scheme is unsustainable. And he made mention of certain things that the previous administration has done. He talked about the divestment of NCB. We talk about lands that was given to people and different properties of the state that was divested to foreigners and other people. And he's using that premise to say that he don't believe that the present pension system is unsustainable. It's very unfortunate. I heard him this morning, just now on the radio, saying certain things again, which is totally contradicting some of these points he had made on Ride Along. It is clear to me that there has been a certain character of the union over the years, always wanting to be in a conflict situation, to become relevant. They don't want to be in a situation where you can amicably sit at the table and discuss certain things. And my position is, and maybe I may be wrong, the government look at the situation and they had to come up with a plan. You cannot go to the union first and ask them what to do. You as the employer, as the manager, wherever, the owner, you have to come up with something. And then you go to these people and say, look, what is our plan? They can now in return say, we don't like that aspect, we don't believe that one is true, and maybe make suggestions and alternatives. But you cannot expect the government to come before you without a plan. Okay, and they seem to be sticking on this thing about, well, they have to be part of, they're stakeholders, yes. But at what stage do the stakeholders come in? Is it at the grassroots level, right down at the bottom, before you have a plan? And all of those things, I'm sensing it from the discussion that I've had privately and publicly.
Okay,
my suggestion to the government, the people elect you into government. You have a responsibility. And the government need to do certain things in the interest of Grenada. Not in the interest of a few people, in the interest of Grenada. Because even when we look around in the world, just to end my presentation.
Thank you.
All of the countries, even England, our pension scheme, the pension scheme is contributory. It is not a one person doing the thing. So at some point in time, you will have to make a cutoff. And some people, yes, will be affected. So the union need to get on board. My thing is, I would say to them, change a gear.
Thank you very much,
They have been driving in number one, and they need to go in another gear. Thank you.
Thank you. 3 minutes on to the hour of 10 o'clock. We've exhausted the 1 hour. And I'm not sure if you want to comment on the last caller. And
it's only that, when we examine any pension plan that is unfunded and non-contributory is a strain on any organization, because you will now have to diverse fund that you can use for other capital spending to support growth towards funding a pension plan. So that alone in itself, the construct alone tells us that it's not sustainable, right? And when you look at, as the caller said, most, if not all, pension plans around the world is contributory. Even in Grenada, outside of the government pension, which one is non-contributory? Most of it. I've just came from Korea to a pension reform exchange, and all of the countries that were represented were contributory pension plans. So we have to be mindful of all of that when we make our comments and decisions.
We'll leave the conversation there for now. There's no argument that the conversation touching and surrounding pension reform will continue to be, will be that an ongoing one. My hope, though, is that persons, we put ourselves in a position to know and make decisions based objective evaluations, and not necessarily that we speak randomly from the top of our heads. Who's to benefit from this conversation? I think ultimately that's what needs to be done. It needs to be done. How do we address the challenges facing the average working class Grenadian here at home? It's all about national growth. It should not be about personal and self-gratification. Until then, this is where I leave the conversation. JC loves you. You keep well. I'll be back with you on television in 1 hour's time. God bless. Well, I'm getting the sense that somebody wants us to continue the conversation because they are not releasing us.
Okay, not a problem.
Well, I was asking you though, because there were persons until Master Country is ready for us, and then please, Master Country, let me know what's happening on your side. There were certain there's been certain arguments regarding that 3%, and then those that have advanced the argument, Lord, 3%. Little as it may sound, it's already weight, added burden on the working class.
I mean, from where we sit, I could never see a matching contributory as a negative, because you add 3 and 3, you get 6. So even if you take out your 3, you still gain. So there's always an advantage for you. And I mean, it's a matter of prioritizing. I mean, we understand that sometimes in life, something had to give. I mean, so if it means us spending less on something that we enjoyed before for the greater good, we've learned early in our primary school, delayed gratification is something that we all as adults have to be mindful of. So we would encourage our public officers to see it as something that, as an investment, it's not a burden.
In business is referred to as the alternative cost, that which must be given up in order to obtain the next best
thing. Mm-hmm. So it's delayed gratification. You give up a little today for the greater good tomorrow.
Do you get the sense, though, sometimes we're very myopic in how we look, that we introduce politics into it more than realizing that this conversation is really about the people, the working class, and what happens to them 20, 30 years down the line, my grandchildren, your grandchildren, and their livelihood?
Well, sometimes people do that, but I think the onus is on us as individuals to make decisions that are best fitting for us. So no matter where you sit, look at it through, the broadest lens and see what is beneficial to you as an individual and other people that can also benefit.
Based on information that's available at the time. At the time. Well, I think Master Controller, if they've sorted out their technical issues, and this is where I say goodbye to you. For those of you that's in the radio, I'll be continuing with you up until 12. Until then, Grenada. And tomorrow, the police is expected to be in when we continue the conversation. And on Friday, they understand we're expected to have folks from NADMA looking at matters touching us around the tsunamis and other matters that they would deal with directly. Until then, so long.